that the Ofsted review, the single inspection framework from 2017, did highlight that there are quite a few areas for improvement, particularly around the experiences of children waiting to be looked after, the impact of long-term foster carers and people in placement. And also, the support that care leavers are receiving is too inconsistent. So I wonder if you could just dwell on those issues around, what actually has been done to tackle them in the first instance, and how we've now got this positive review. And then also linked to this is, we all have this responsibility as members. What are you doing to ensure that every member of the council is taking up, their responsibilities? Because I don't feel this area gets enough attention, given how important it is.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for your questions. Yes. On the focus visit, I mean, it was very, very positive, and that was really on the back of the work that we had done since the review, really. And we basically got Catch-22 in, a voluntary organisation. Interestingly enough, Catch-22 were the leading people of the Hive in Camden that I've just spoken about. And they're actually working with care leavers to actually commission and design their own service. So that was very positive. I think the way that social workers went over and above, so on the front line, the real, basically I think there's an acknowledgement that there's really good work going on the front line and much more focused around children in care and care leavers. So I think that was picked up in the focus visit. On the, what is what is the council doing? I think I saw Johnson here. I think basically if you ask any of the cabinet members, I'm sure they would say that, I'm never done with raising the issue of corporate parenting, whether it's, basically trying to secure, new council housing off Leo and off Johnson, to secure that in the best areas for young people, in my ward, actually, our ward, that should go to care leavers, basically, there's that, there's the issue around, when I sat on the other side of the table, I always used to get frustrated about job opportunities for care leavers because it was immeasurable, because whenever you went to Inspire and to the front line, you would say, how many care leavers have got apprenticeships and how many have got jobs? And they would say, oh, well, people that are in care or leaving care don't want to be identified. And it would be like, oh. But now, having got in cabinet, when you raise that question, people are, business processing and engineering to make sure that this information is found. So basically, I think that is going to be a massive improvement. That, the fact that we put in our manifesto that every care leaver would have a guaranteed apprenticeship or, basically an education place. So I think, that is moving in the right direction. There's a few one step forwards and a couple of steps back. I mean, you remember we put that motion to Council Assembly saying that we wanted to have handwritten correspondence. That's taken a little longer than I would have liked. But now I think basically what we'll say is that we will get cards to children in care, and it will be on their birthday, but we will have a note saying if their exams are coming up and things, so we can write personalised message. But, the thing is, we've never got all the answers. I mean, you're as much, a champion as I am. If you have seen that we need to do more, let's work together and let's make sure, maybe we should just bombard Council Assembly with, these issues. But, happy to work together, really, because I think, this is one of the most important of our responsibilities, but I really feel we are moving in the right direction.
I completely endorse that, and I think you're right. We need to work collectively on this, and this is one of those issues that it'd be fantastic if it's not, made in. We work regardless of party politics on it.
Yeah,
I think it's so important that we take up that corporate responsibility. Moving to your work with schools. One of the areas that that's been in the news recently has been about the teaching of gender equality and sexuality in our schools, and sort of the outrageous scenes of parents demonstrating outside schools for standing up for the principles and values of the Equalities Act, and the teaching of LGBT and gender equality in schools. So I wonder what work are you doing with Southwark schools to make sure that you know those values are being taught?
Well, obviously, you know, the basis of our whole being in the council is for inclusion. You know, so obviously, you know, we will work with our schools to make sure that everyone has an inclusive agenda. You know, I don't know whether you wanted to add anything, you know, what we're doing in schools.
I just reiterate what you just said, which is the focus is really about our schools being inclusive schools. So we do provide signposting and advice and guidance on curriculum. So we work with public health. We have a healthy schools advisor who leads and networks on a number of areas: LGBT, mental health, well-being. So it's partially wrapped up in that. We also, the schools are required to have equalities policies, and they should have them up on their website. So we do a check on those from time to time, and particularly if there are schools that we're concerned about. And we'll support our schools and the governing bodies actually, and reminding them about what their duties are and their responsibilities are, and they should be running inclusive schools.
I mean, I'm sure you'll agree that, you know, we must stand up for the rights of all children from every background, and, you know, particularly in a borough as diverse as ours, and I really appreciate the work that you've just mentioned that's going on. Has anything specifically been done since the issue sort of rose its head in Birmingham recently? And are we maybe going back to check whether or not, now that this has actually come to the fore on a national scale, whether or not, you know, we can be assured that the right sort of practices are being done to promote gender equality and LGBT rights?
Actually, one thing I was going to say, which was basically on the mental health issue, because, you know, obviously we've got academies and sometimes they relate and sometimes they don't relate, but one of the things is, because we've got 2 million to put in our schools, I've kind of taken advantage of that. Be careful, we're being live streamed, well, I'll tell the schools now, but we've got this survey, and I've put a lot of the questions which we would want to know, you know, about how we spend the 2 million to get the prevention. I've already spoken to the secondary head teachers and everyone's interested in that. But actually, it's not gone out yet, Victor. So maybe we could get our heads together and we could add another question on that. Because I've already added exclusion, because obviously that's linked to mental health. And, you know, but it's like, no, I'm trying not to make it a long shopping list, but happy to add something on that, you know. So we'll, because we're pretty much guaranteed to get good participation on that.
Excellent. And final question is, part of your role is to work to improve services for those with HIV. We passed a unanimous motion at the last council around you know, the access to PrEP. I understood that London councils met last week to examine this issue, and sadly they didn't agree to the fully funding access to PrEP. So I just wonder if you could elaborate on what work you and the council as a whole are doing to try and make sure that universal access is there.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I did not know the outcome of the London Council, so I'm not up to speed yet, but I'm wondering if any of I can get any help with this answer, or whether we should come back.
I think I need to speak to our public health colleagues. I don't think it quite sits under
No, you mentioned it. Cross sort of portfolio. It
is cross-cutting, and I really didn't want to say, you know, it's not my department, but basically, because we, you know, the idea is, I mean, the officers, they must get quite dizzy sometimes because they're so cross-cutting that they have, like, instead of 1 member, they get 3, but I'm happy to take it up with Evelyn as well and come back.
Yep, that'd be good if you could. Thank you. What I want to mention to members is, it's already 20 to 9 and this interview goes on until 9. So if you could keep your answers quite short and concise, and if we could keep our questions short and concise going forward, I would be most appreciated, because what I don't want to do is cut people off, but I will do come 9 o'clock. Hamara, then Jason.
Hi, and I'm going to sneakily get in I love hearing from you, my fellow namesake Councillor Ali, because you are so enthusiastic that you get everybody enthusiastic about it, so thank you for that.
Yeah, that's what you should be like, a bit more like Councillor.
We Alis, right? Right, really quickly then, before I get beaten up. Just to follow up on Maria's question about transition to older ages, and I know we have a housing crisis, and I know housing is a tough one here, but what are we doing around, and I think this should cut into your area around older people who have health conditions, especially Alzheimer's, dementia, where they are on housing lists and they're saying, look, I need to move my home because I'm on the 4th floor and I need to go to the ground floor, I need to go somewhere else before, or my partner does, before they don't recognise the local area. And you know, we've got I know that seems quite specific, but there's other related health issues. So what's the plan around that? And I'll ask the question separately if that's okay.
Yeah. I mean, that is the dementia journey, isn't it? I think everything that we're doing, you know, is around, you know, a broader understanding of that. The nursing homes, you know, that basically the only way that they're going to get planning permission is, you know, the sophistication of understanding the issue and getting that right. The extra supported accommodation that we got signed off, you know, that is about early onset dementia. And then underneath that is a hub. You know, the idea, we've got the older people's hub, and that's going to be on Cater Street, but it will be a hub, and that already sits behind supported accommodation, you know, Teo Situ House. So, you know, what I'm trying to tell you is that I think, you know, we're moving in that direction to make it end to end. The other thing I want to assure you, because I get a lot of casework now, and it, you know, sometimes it feels like I get everybody's casework, but I've got quite a good relationship with housing. So, you know, what happens is if I raise a case by case, we can usually do as much as we possibly can to make sure that person's treatment and journey is as painless as possible.
Okay, thank you. Second question's around schools exclusions. So, sorry.
No, that's good.
So, in inner London, Southwark has the 4th highest rate, and compared to, say, Lewisham, which seems to be completely out of control, we're doing a lot better, but actually...
Probably share some schools, don't we?
No, absolutely, but can you just talk generally about schools' exclusion rates? Are we going up and down? And if up, or even consistent, what are we doing to work with the academy? So I'm going to really focus on secondary schools now, because that's where the numbers are.
Yeah.
Primarily because exclusions are part and parcel of that story around young people, youth violence and everything else.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, basically, even if, you know, I've got the numbers written down in my preparation, but even one is one too much, because that child is not going to get that life back. So, you know, I'm in total agreement with you. I've been to visit SASH, you know, Matt Jones, he's the head of Globe Academy. You know, he's like really forward thinking and everything. He gets like, he's really committed to narrowing the gap in attainment between rich and poor. And he's saying that there's more that we can do. So one of the things that we're going to do, and it basically occupies, it's cross-cutting, because it's not just about secondary, it's also about primary, because the thing that Matt's saying, and the thing that Jenny Brennan, who works under Alistair, is that by the time it's weird, because it's primary as well, because when you're dealing with primary, you've got parents in and out all the time, and everybody knows each other, and everyone's looking out for one another, and it's really supportive. So you can keep the lid on something, you know what I mean? If someone's not doing well, it's almost, you know, you can keep the lid on it. But then, by the time you get to secondary, it's much more wider. The parents probably, you know, don't go there as often. And, you know, it's like much more challenging. So if you've had issues in primary school, it's been quite supportive, then it's tenfold. And it's that, you know, when it kicks off. So really, we need to think about it as an end-to-end, and that's what we're doing. That's why Jenny Brennan, head of early help, is like working with secondaries and primaries to make sure we do all that we can. And then going back to my magic survey, I hope I haven't underestimated its value by just talking about it now, but we are going to send it to every school. And academies, as I said, you know, sometimes they love us, sometimes they don't need to talk to us. But, you know, I put a question on exclusion because I feel that there is more that we can do to support. I'm not sure what that is now, but I think, you know, are there any, I don't know the answers to this, but this is what my survey is going to try and find out. Are there some perverse incentives in the system? Is it that people think, you know, I'm not getting enough support, so in order to get the support we need, we've got to exclude, which is the wrong way of looking at it. So really, it's about prevention. So, you know, I'm really up for doing that work, and, you know, we just want to, you know, make no exclusions.
Cool, thanks. Perhaps you'll follow up with some of our latest statistics, if that's possible, around exclusions over the last couple of years in Southwark. That would be great, thank you. And then last but not least, obviously police cuts are hampering us across all sorts of areas. How are you guaranteeing our safeguarding measures where we've, and if I'm being quite specific in my ward, without saying too much because this is publicly being recorded, but there are some issues on some estates where we have some very young people involved in drug dealing and a variety of other things. Police are trying to be all over it, but because of the new mergers, actually they're being pulled away from that now onto things which are even bigger. So what sort of measures have we got in place to try and at least try and compensate for that until somebody sorts it out?
Yeah, I mean, it's not just a police issue though, is it? I'm not trying to, you know, I'm just trying to get to a proper conclusion really. I mean, the thing about the safeguarding is where it has been successful is that safeguarding is everybody's business. So we all have to work together. So I'm confident that we have got that in process now. We have got a safeguarding board, and so all the partners, including the police, are represented on that. So, you know, that's a good starting point. But when you look at the issue of youth violence and the estates, it becomes more complicated, and which is why I'm glad we've got Stephen Douglas. You know, it's not really my portfolio, but he's looking after me because he knows that we have to be absolutely integrated, and we are becoming more sophisticated in our work, really. We had a peer review on that. It's not, well, I was going to say it again, not my department. Of course it's my department. We had a peer review, and that told us some different things that we didn't know, that actually there wasn't one particular type that would be involved in county lines. There's child sexual exploitation, you know, and it's much wider. It's wider than the estates, really. And I think that involves a much more joined up approach. And I don't think, while policing is an important point of that, it's not the be and end all, and that's not the thing that we should be fixated on. Do you see what I mean? And that's why I think we're moving in the right direction.
Yeah, no, I totally understand that policing is not the be all and end all, but it was very specific about the fact that because they're being pulled off, and safeguarding is something that comes into your area, I was just really concerned that actually things are starting to disintegrate in some areas. So are we able to concentrate, or have we reached breaking point? That's kind of where I'm going.
Well, look, the thing is, you know, on issues like this, obviously it's a lead member interview, but we have to keep the dialogue going, really, because the minute that we think we've got the solution, you know, there'll be other initiatives. So, you know, we've got to keep working together. I mean, Stephen Douglas, Councillor Koto, you know, we all go, we go to the same commissioning, we go to all the same meetings, and we're doing the same work on the ground, really.
Brilliant, thank you very much, Maura. Jason, then Eleanor.
My questions were not.
Thank you very much, Jason. Eleanor, then Margie.
Thanks, Bill. I'll try and keep it quick.
Just shout.
Okay, but I'll just shout. Thanks very much, Jasmine. So I wanted to ask about very, very early years. And as you know, I'm a service user, person who uses services. I'm coming to the end of my maternity leave at the moment, and I've been to a lot of the children's centres that Southwark provides, that are provided by voluntary organisations and by churches. And something I've said to the leader, Peter John, is I'm going to write to him and you because they're just fantastic, and it's not something that I truly appreciated before I became a person that uses those services. That they are kind, they are accessible, they're diverse, So I've got so many good things to say about Southwark centres, about other centres, and I'll send those to you, and particularly about their staff. But there was something I wanted to ask, and people talk about very early years interventions and support as a kind of solution to everything from knife crime to obesity to deprivation and inequality. And so that's obviously something we want to do brilliantly in Southwark. And just as examples, a few things I have noticed in the children's centres is they've had to stop offering free fruit. So they give pre-nursery school-aged children fruit if a parent brings some in. They can offer one thing a day. They're often so full and so popular that they're having to turn people away, and they no longer can accept children that are brought by childminders and nannies, because they're just so popular. And I just, with those kind of challenges, and I'm sure they all come from funding challenges. How are we making sure that it's just excellent for everybody in Southwark, that very early years provision?
Yeah, I mean, children's centres were meant to be, universal, and that's why, from my own experience, I learned, a lot of my parenting techniques, not just stuff the other mums, but the childminders. Do you know what I mean? They were like, colleges really. So obviously we've got to look at that. I mean, I must admit, from a personal perspective, I was so pleased to get it through budget, with no cuts. We felt that actually. Great, we've got it through. We saw all the children's centre managers, there'll be no cuts in this area this year, but obviously there's more to do, and I'm happy to look into that. Especially on the fruit, I'm sure there's something we can do, because we're rolling out free healthy school meals in all our nurseries now. So actually, it's not a skip and a hop to do it with the children's centres. So, I mean, I'm saying that now, I'll probably get a clip round the ear roll, but I mean, what I will do is I will look into that. Cool. But thank you very much.
And I'll write to you in the leader in
that,
detail.
I mean, that would be really, really useful. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ellen. Marky, then Peter.
Just very quickly, I'd like to echo everything that Umara said. It's fantastic listening to you. I was going to ask about carers, that's been answered. One thing which is I'm very conscious of in my ward again, we have a lot of, in and bordering on my ward, 3 very prestigious independent schools. And I wondered whether you had thought in any way about ways in which we may be able to somehow draw on the resources that could possibly be available in those areas. This is actually coming to my mind, actually no, it's too long a story, I'm not going to talk about it. Basically, I'm very conscious that they have charitable status, which means they pay sort of about 90% mandatory reduction in their business rates that they pay, and I'd be very interested to see sort of ways that we could somehow use those resources for the wider community.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much for that. That's a really excellent idea. I mean, we're already doing that. Schools are always working together quite well. So, perhaps we could...
Two things. Firstly, it's a conversation we've been having recently about how we can make better use of that resource. And secondly, we have been approached by independent schools, but I don't think the ones that you're referring to have been the ones that have approached us.
I'd love to have a conversation about it. So out of this meeting, that'd be great. Thanks.
Cool.
Well, we'll put something in the diary and get together on that, but that's good. But there's also, I've had expressions of interest for sports fields and everything for local schools. So, I think that we should definitely tap into the resources that we've now got in your area. Now we've got an actual Labour councillor there, so thank you.
Excellent, thank you very much. Peter, then Pia.
Hi, Jasmine. Just a few quick questions. The first one was just building on the question around CAMS and the 100% target, which it's fantastic that we're being ambitious. I just wondered how we're guarding against risk with that in terms of, say, for example, pushing up the percentage, but maybe doing less with people with more critical need. How are we kind of guarding against some of the kind of unintended side effects that can happen with such ambitious targets?
do you know where I had that question before? I mean, it is a good question, but do you remember where I had that question? I had that question, do you remember? It was basically at a youth event, and there was like loads and loads of young people at this Positive Futures event. And I got up and I talked about mental health, and I really felt my age, do you know what I mean? I felt that I was quite patronising because I was talking about mental health and the issue of the whole school approach, and then breaking it down, saying, is it okay in your school to not be okay? And I sat down and I thought, oh, that was so patronising, but it landed with them, didn't it? And they were all asking me great questions. And basically, a young person asked me that. I don't know how old she was, but basically, she said that. And then my answer to her, no, but it's a really great question. And my answer was, it's not a competition. You know, once you get these processes off the ground, you know, and we get open the centre and we get prevention, you know, because she said, what about people if they don't really need it, you know? And I was going, well, that's not competition. The fact is that we've got counsellors, we've got links to CAMS, and, you know, we should be in a position so whatever you need, even if you know, your need is that you don't need it, you know, we can help you really. So I think, you know, there's no two ways about it. You've got to do the prevention, and then you've also got to do the, you know, the holding of people.
Okay, great. Second question was just on special guardianship, which falls on your brief, which is one of my hobby horses. And no, it kind of falls on the core parent, but it's not explicitly mentioned in your kind of role description. And I just wondered, like, how are we kind of ensuring that special guardians have, well, for want of a better phrase, kind of parity of esteem with like adoptive or foster parents, whether that's through kind of access to services on a council level or otherwise.
Yeah. I mean, that is the issue of the day, isn't it? You know, the issue of the day is we don't want a Rolls-Royce scheme for adopters and then foster carers who've got the bulk of children in our care. You know, they have like sort of second class, and then you have the tail in at the end, special guardianship. We want parity for all of that. We want a gold standard. You know, we're one of the, you know, few local authorities that have got outstanding for our adoption service. We're going to be running the Regional Adoption Agency for the biggest consortia. So, you know, it's within our gift to move that issue along. But we're not there yet, obviously, because you will get less money, won't you, if you are a special guardianship order. But, you know, we'll have to work together on that, really. But, you know, we're in a good position to lead on that.
Cool, thank you very much.
Sorry,
sorry, go on.
Just the last one. I just want to hear a little bit more on the Care Leaders Partnership you mentioned as a part of the project, and expanding affordable childcare nurseries. Is that something that I think comes out with in casework for a number of us?
Okay, I'll take the last one first, because that is not my department, but basically that sits in Councillor Mills, because actually one thing that we said, you know, is for heaven's sake, you know, let, you know, stop, you know, the situation where people have to go to payday lenders, they have to go to, you know, loan sharks and everything in order to just make ends meet. And that's when they're working, you know, to the price of childcare. I mean, it really is ridiculous. So Catherine Rose, our mayor, she came up with the idea of, you know, organising loans, and now that sits with Councillor Mills, and they will have to hatch something within the lifetime of our administration, really. So that is with them. Sorry to do that, not my department bits. But then the issue of the care leavers, I mean, that is going really well. I mean, we've got Catch-22, you know, they're working with the care leavers. Basically, the idea is that they design a new way of procuring, really. Do you want to update on that, Alistair?
Yes, we've had an increasing number of care leavers, so we've worked with care leavers in Catch-22 to develop specialist roles, so we've recruited newly to specialists. So instead of just having social workers working with care leavers, we've recruited mental health specialists, substance use specialists, a housing, a homelessness worker. So the idea that you bring those specialists into the team, and you're able to work in a better way to address the multiple issues that care leavers present, plus working with other parts of the council to see how they can link with that. So there's a better cross-council corporate parenting offer. So there's still quite a long way to go with that, but we are made use of that investment with different roles and designed with the help of young people. So we're going to evaluate that over the next year.
I just wanted to add, thank you. I wanted to add to that I forgot to mention, I should have mentioned it in answer to your question as well, Victor, but we've got a lot of events coming up now, and we've got the Care Leavers Covenant. So basically we have managed to get the two departments to work together, you know, the employment department along with Alistair's department. We'll be launching the Covenant, asking businesses to come forward. So that's a date in the diary. We've also got John Baptiste. Do people know him? He's like a really charismatic entrepreneur type. He was in care, and then he went to Oxbridge, and then he got in Oxbridge, and then decided it wasn't for him, and then left. And then he got into X Factor, and he got as far as judges' houses, and I told you he's an amazingly charismatic man. And he basically got to judges' houses, and he decided that wasn't for him either. But I tell you what is for him. He came and had a meeting with myself, the head of comms, and the leader. And, you know, their diaries are very, you know, much more packed than even ours. And they were like, oh, who is this guy? And he came in and he just basically bawled them over. And then next thing you know, he's meeting with Alistair, organising this big event for care leavers. So, you know, there's quite a lot going on in that area, really. And he'll be leading on that, and it'd be great if people could come along and support it.
Okay, Peter, yeah? Yep. Thank you. Cleo, then John.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Jasmine. I was particularly interested in your comments around parents and that whole sort of notion of parents being the expert and having equitable status. But I was wondering, what is the council doing specifically to support the parent who doesn't deem themselves the expert? And what sort of targeted, focused work, and especially, you know, we've touched on safeguarding for those vulnerable parents that feel particularly unskilled, for want of a better term, and especially with the escalation of youth crime, etc. What is the council doing, and more broadly with our looked after children, our LAP children as well, please?
Thanks, Cleo. I should have said that the parental strategy that we launched, that was with 60-odd families, which were all people that have used our services. So, you know, that was quite universal. You know, it's like basically the people that, you know, people who might find our services hard to reach. So, you know, basically it was a mixture. So I think, you know, we're moving in the right direction there. And that's why I was so bowled over. I mean, if it was just, you know, any old families saying that they wanted an association, it wasn't. It was people that had used our services. You know, they said they wanted an association. They wanted to run it. So, you know, I hope that's answered your question, really.
But what are they saying specifically? What sort of more help would they?
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Well, a number of things. Yeah, a number of things really. I mean, basically, you know, they want to be a unit. They want to talk to the council about. The whole idea is that we don't design services for families. The banner is keeping families strong. So, you know, if people get hit by unemployment, if people have got youth violence in their family, if people have got, you know, any issue, the idea is, you know, you work with the families themselves, not the young person in isolation from their parents, but actually you're working, you know, end to end really, working with the family. So that was, you know, that's why we had our massive banners in the room, keeping families strong. I think they're still up there in the meeting rooms in the Peckham levels.
In terms of being able to sort of quantify and will you be doing in order to judge the success of that? How will you judge the success of that?
The success will be in the participation and what they say. I mean, basically, I should have done slides really, but while they were speaking in the meeting, we had an artist and she was drawing pictures of all their suggestions. So, you know, we'll get to a point whereby, you know, all of those suggestions will be fed into the council, and the success of that will be the evaluation, their evaluation of, you know, what we have done. We're basically, there's a new approach really, and we say, you said we did, so we will probably use that. It's worked quite well, hasn't it? You know, when we met the young people for the second time, you know, we said to them, and in fact, the young people suggested that we work closely with families, and so I was able to say to them, you said we did, and I told them about the launch. So, you know, it will be evaluated through, you know, what we do. It will be measured like any business plan.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, no, because I was going to come in there, but you do.
And are you trialling this between that specific cohort, or will it be then? I mean, I'm not entirely clear about.
I mean, I could bring Alistair in, but I would say that it was myself and Jennifer, you know, we hosted the evening, and, you know, it was very much, you know, we heard what people had to say, we broke the groups up, and even the creches, we fed back what everybody wanted. So, you know, when I facilitated the end bit, you know, I checked in with everybody, you know, what they were saying, the artist got it right, we wrote down everything. So, you know, it's about, and that's when someone came up with, one of the parents said they wanted an association, really. So, you know, we will be treating it like a very important area of work, and we won't, you know, obviously we'll meet with short shrift if we don't deliver on it.
How will you know that it's been a success? You can deliver on something that can be a failure. So what are the performance indicators, which I think is where you're going? How will you know it's been a success?
Well, you'll know it's been a success when we basically deliver.
Delivery is not a success.
Oh right, okay. How will we know?
So what we aspire to do is to enable children to remain with their families.
Sure.
So when we listen to those parents, we want a conversation around that, because one of the big things they want is to be given the right help for whatever is the issue at the time, and be treated with dignity and respect.
Sure.
And they don't always experience our services in that way, because sometimes we are having to do quite tough safeguarding action. So in terms of measures, at the moment we've got the lowest number of children in our care we've ever had. So I take that as a measure that we're enabling children as far as possible to be with their families. So that's one, but every family is a different circumstance, and what we need to do is enable the voices to tell us how they experienced our services better, and are we getting it right for them, and change and adapt our services as much as possible.
So then there will be a matrix attached to that, which will enable us to chart that progression.
Well, I'm not going to promise.
What
I would say, we are setting up a family council. So last year we worked with family rights groups to engage a lot of parents around what would be more helpful to bring their voice closer to what we do, so we can change what we do better, make our services better. So the family council we're going to look at establishing a role to provide support for those, because what parents often want is other parents who've been through their same experiences to support them, peer advocacy and peer support. So we're developing those. What I sincerely hope arises out of that is a stronger voice for parents. In the way that we have for children in care, we have speaker box telling us how they experience our services. We don't really have that present voice for parents, so we need to make sure that's alongside, because most children, they stay with their families, they go back to their families. We need to be doing much more dynamic way about what is helpful for them. I think particularly around adolescence and the issues that we have around a lot of risk outside the family home, which parents feel quite powerless to affect.
So to wrap it up then, it's the analysis of service users' experience.
Yes,
Yeah, got it.
Can I say one thing before I get kicked out?
No. I gotta bring in another question. Clea, are you happy with the answers you've received?
Yeah, is that
look
better?
forward to
To that analysis. I would too. John and Maria, really close.
Hi, Jasmine. A long time ago, it seems, you mentioned the DSG.
Yes.
You haven't had any questions on it yet. Now, from what you said, 12 million adrift does sound better than 14 million adrift. But knowing that any discussion that involves a large number of heads is to some extent herding cats, in addition to having a plan in place to move to eliminate this over time, are you also confident that the schools forum and the wider heads group recognise the problem and are behind the solution?
Well, I am, because I know a woman who does, but I will hand over to, it makes sense for Nina to answer this, because this is, what she's heavily engaged in. Yeah.
So, the plans that we have in place have been, and that we're discussing and looking at, are with schools forum, so they are absolutely part and parcel of understanding the issue, how the issue has arisen, and looking at the lines of spend and how we might mitigate and over time manage that spend. Now, some of that we can. Lobbying was mentioned earlier, and there's no getting away from the fact that at least half of that spend is due to additional duties with absolutely no additional funding. That's the bit that's really, really difficult for anyone to really try to manage easily or quickly. So in terms of the wider school audience, yes, the messages are being shared with as many head teachers as we can speak to and see, and at the Southern Governors Association and through our discussions with governors. So if we're going to have a chance of making some headway through these millions of pounds, it's got to be, no one agency is going to be able to do it on their own. So it's in our interest to make sure that our schools know and that they may not be on board, because that may impact on them and their budgets, or the needs that how the needs of the children in their school are being met. But we do have to find some way together with management.
So, I mean, obviously appreciate that these are school budgets. They are enormously stretched in comparison to just a few years ago. I think we all take seriously the fact that there aren't enough monies to go round. But nonetheless, the bottom line is the bottom line, and any ongoing build-up in monies sort of going forward with these budgets is bigger problems for the schools further down the line. So what's the timescale for drawing up that solution plan, and presumably then need a timescale to get the schools to actually sign up to some of the measures that will be required?
So we mentioned Budget Recovery Board earlier, which meets monthly. So at the moment we're looking at plans over the next 2 to 3 years in terms of trying to manage within the budget that we have, and then we can start during that time looking to see how we then manage the structural deficit that sits underneath that. So we're still very hopeful that the lobbying and the autumn spending review may produce something, and then it's also then how we work across children's services as a whole, rather than looking at education and children's services, social care, etc.
Okay, we're on the end now, and Maria's got 3 final questions which are going to be submitted, but we would require written answers.
Oh, okay.
So Maria's going to
Oh, really?
come off with 3 questions.
She's your lethal weapon, isn't she? Anyway, come on.
First of all, I want to say congratulations. It's really a pleasure to listen to you with the enthusiasm and the answers you have. But regarding the ethical care and improving the quality of home care, quality ethical care, do you mean palliative and supported district nursing care, or what do you mean? You have to come back to me because we are not supposed to. Okay? Now, the next question is, you said that SADC is an age-friendly battle.
Yeah.
What do you mean as friendly?
Yeah.
Always geared towards all people is my question really.
Yeah, no.
Do you provide, that's the final question, do you provide facilities for active aging?
Yeah.
So physical support, activity, etc., etc.
Yeah.
That's it, those are my questions.
And we can,
So if you can come back to me, I will be very, very grateful.
we'll write to the committee by when?
By June would be great.
We're trying to get back.
What did you say? We'll get back
By
to
June
you.
would be good, which is the
June.
first meeting of the new municipal.
We'll definitely have it by June.
You'll have it.
Thank you very much.
Okay, that can,
Otherwise tomorrow will be great.
Yeah? We can do that.
she is my secret weapon. Jasmine, that concludes the interview. Thank you very, very much. It was very detailed and it was very, very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Committee, we're going to have a 5-minute comfort break before we come back to the SIL report and the health inequalities report back to us. So 5 minutes back here at 9:20.